the world champions of the past, now fighting to survive. It's the round of 16. The heat of California is unbearable. The crowd is against them, and early in the game, a red card. Brazil are down to 10 men. The pressure is crushing. Every pass feels heavier, every second longer. For a moment it seems like the dream is over. Everything points to disaster. But when hope seems gone, one man refuses to accept defeat. A small man with a giant heart. A man who didn't play for fame, but for love. This is the story of a little man who became a giant on the field and brought his country the greatest glory of all. In the heart of Salvador, under the burning sun of Bahia, a young boy played barefoot in the streets, a ball made of rags and dreams far too big for his small frame. His name was Bebeto. To his neighbors, he was just another skinny kid with a smile too shy to match his ambition. But to him, football was everything. He was small. Too small, they said, too fragile to survive in the rough, unforgiving fields of Brazil. Yet every time he touched the ball, something changed. There was grace in the way he moved, precision, vision, and a calm that seemed out of place for a boy his age. He didn't shout, he didn't fight. He just played as if the game itself understood him. And little by little, the streets of Bahia began to whisper his name. Soon those whispers reached the ears of Vitória, one of Bahia's biggest clubs. And that's where the boy who wasn't supposed to make it began to prove everyone wrong. At Vitória, the coaches saw it instantly. Not strength, not size, but something rarer. Intelligence, discipline, and heart. Bebeto didn't overpower defenders, he outsmarted them. He saw passes before they happened. He found spaces no one else could see. In a country built on flair, Bebeto played with precision. While others chased the spotlight, he chased perfection. And soon that quiet boy from Bahia was ready for the biggest challenge of all, the call that every Brazilian dreams of: Flamengo. The moment he arrived in Rio, he was surrounded by noise, cameras, fans, expectations. For most, it would have been overwhelming, but for Bebeto, it was just another game. In Flamengo, he learned to carry the weight of the jersey, to play not just for himself, but for millions. Every match hardened him, every goal silenced another doubt, and soon the same people who once said he was too small began calling him a giant in disguise. But greatness rarely comes without challenge, and Bebeto's rise was about to meet its first test, one that would change the course of his life and of Brazilian football itself. Because somewhere in Rio, another star was rising, louder, bolder, and destined to collide with him. At Flamengo, the boy from Bahia became a man. Surrounded by legends, forged by pressure, Bebeto learned what it truly meant to wear red and black. It wasn't about the noise or the fame. It was about the standard, about earning your name. In a team where talent overflowed, Bebeto's calmness made him stand out. While others celebrated, he analyzed. While others shouted, he listened. And while others dreamed about being heroes, Bebeto dreamed about winning. His touch was delicate, his timing perfect. He didn't run faster, he thought quicker. He didn't fight with strength, he fought with precision. And soon the whispers that once doubted him turned into cheers that filled the Maracanã. He was no longer just a promise, he was becoming the heartbeat of Flamengo. And it was there, in Rio, that destiny finally introduced him to another soul on the same path. A man just as gifted, just as hungry, but the complete opposite of Bebeto, Romario. Fire and ice, the loud and the quiet, the unpredictable genius, and the disciplined craftsman. Together, they were chaos and control, a perfect storm in yellow and green. When they played side by side, defenders didn't stand a chance. Romario would strike like lightning, and Bebeto would follow like thunder. In 1989, Brazil was desperate for hope, 40 years without a Copa America title. That year, inside the Maracanã, the weight of a nation fell on their shoulders. Bebeto and Romario, the perfect duo. The calm before the chaos, the balance between heart and fire. They didn't just play football, they brought Brazil back to life. When the final whistle blew, Brazil was champion again. 40 years of waiting, gone in an instant. But football never lets you rest for long. Just when he reached the top in Brazil, another challenge was waiting, thousands of miles away, in a place where no one knew his name. Spain would test everything he had, his body, his mind, and his faith. And in that silence, far from home, Bebeto would find himself again. Success had made Bebeto a hero in Brazil, but heroes rarely stay in one place for long. In 1992, he packed his bags, leaving behind the beaches of Rio for the quiet streets of Galicia, Spain. His new home, Deportivo La Coruña. For most players, it was a step down, a small club, far from the glamour of Madrid or Barcelona. But for Bebeto, it was a test. A chance to prove that his talent didn't depend on fame, on noise, or on anyone else. In Spain, the crowd didn't chant his name. The press didn't follow his every move. It was silence. And in that silence, he rebuilt himself. He learned a different rhythm, colder, tactical, unforgiving. Defenders were stronger, the pitches rougher, and the nights lonelier. But adversity didn't break him. It refined him. At Deportivo, he became something more than a striker. He became a leader. He scored goals, dozens of them. But what made him special wasn't the numbers. It was the way he carried himself, calm, professional, relentless. He brought to Spain the same discipline that had made him a champion in Brazil. But now, he paired it with wisdom. Every goal he scored was a message to the world. In 1993, he became the top scorer in La Liga, ahead of names far bigger than his. Yet even then, Brazil barely noticed, while the world talked about others. Romario in Barcelona, new stars rising back home. Bebeto worked quietly, waiting, because deep inside, he knew something no one else did. His story with Brazil wasn't over, and destiny once again was calling. The mission? Bring the World Cup back home. For 24 years, Brazil had waited for another trophy. For Bebeto, it had been a lifetime preparing for one last chance, but no amount of preparation could have predicted what was coming. World Cup 1994, 24 years since Brazil had lifted the trophy. The pressure was suffocating. The ghosts of 1982 and 1986 still haunted the nation. Years of beautiful football that ended in heartbreak. The world didn't believe anymore, even Brazil didn't. But inside that team, something different was growing. Unity, maturity, and faith. Romario and Bebeto, the fire and the calm, reunited at last, this time wearing the same yellow shirt. Two men who couldn't be more different, yet shared the same dream, to bring Brazil back to glory. Their chemistry was instant. Together, they were unstoppable. In the group stage, Bebeto struck against Cameroon, quiet, deadly, efficient. But as the tournament went on, Brazil began to feel the weight of destiny. The knockout stage arrived. Independence Day in America, but it was Brazil fighting for freedom. The heat in California was brutal, over 100 degrees. The air thick, the tension thicker, and then disaster. A red card. Brazil down to 10 men. The world held its breath. The mighty Brazil. One step from collapse. The crowd roared for the underdog. The hosts smelled blood. For a moment it seemed like the dream was ending right there. But that's not what happened, because one man refused to accept defeat. Small, silent, but unshaken. In the 72nd minute, Romario slipped a pass through the defense. The little giant had saved Brazil. That single strike, calm and perfect, carried the weight of an entire nation. Brazil advanced, but fate wasn't finished with him yet. In the quarterfinals, against the Netherlands, came the moment that would define his legacy. The match was chaos, and then, in the 63rd minute, Bebeto broke free. That celebration, that moment, transcended football. It wasn't about goals anymore. It was about life, family, and love. 3 men, 1 emotion. The whole world smiled with them. It was more than a goal. It was hope, joy, and tenderness wrapped in yellow and green. Brazil went on to win 3-2, then beat Sweden, and finally faced Italy in the final. After 24 years, the World Cup was coming home. Amid the noise, the tears, and the chaos, Bebeto stood still. He had achieved everything he ever dreamed of. The boy from Bahia, the small man everyone doubted, was now a world champion. But even on that night of glory, as the confetti rained down, the story was already beginning to fade, because history remembers the loudest voices, and Bebeto was never loud. The world would move on, to new stars, new headlines, new heroes. But the legacy of the little giant was only just beginning. Glory fades quickly. In football, it always does. One day, you're lifting the World Cup. The next, the world moves on. After 1994, Bebeto kept doing what he always did, playing with dignity, humility, and heart. But the spotlight had shifted. The headlines were about Romario, the genius, the showman, the voice. And Bebeto, he was the quiet hero. The man who had carried Brazil through the heat and the chaos, now slipping silently into the shadows. He scored goals, led teams, and continued to wear the yellow shirt with pride. He even returned in 1998, older, slower, but wiser, still giving everything he had for his country. But time, as it always does, kept moving forward. The new generation came, the cameras turned away. And yet, Bebeto never complained. He had seen enough to understand that greatness isn't about applause, it's about the moments that outlive you. And his moment, that simple gesture of love, became eternal. Because that celebration wasn't about fame or glory, it was about love, about the human side of the game. In that 1 second, Bebeto reminded the world what football really is, not just a sport, but a language of emotion.